it was just so magical that I really wanted to just give you guys behind the scenes look at how my life unfolds. This is a pretty continuous experience for me at this point. It's still not normal, even though it's just how life unfolds at this point. But Calen is actually my third birth. And when I was pregnant with him, these wise women, different women who are very, very wise, would come to me and they would start telling me about the specialness of the third birth. How once a woman goes through the third birth, it's like this crowning of the womb. And that's when you really begin to step into a kind of maturity and wisdom that it's just like a deeper initiation. That third crowning, the third birth is such a specific experience that a woman goes through. And my third crowning of my womb happened 3 weeks before my 30th birthday. And I remember this 3-week window. It was such a deep initiation into womanhood and really stepping into being a woman. I feel like obviously being 30 years old, this is a fresh exploration for me. And I know that being a woman is such a highly kind of controversial conversation these days. Like, we don't know what a woman is, what a woman's supposed to be. And so this was a very conscious exploration that I was stepping into. And for me, it really felt like this stepping into womanhood happened almost overnight. Like this 3-week window where before, we would feel like these different insecurities or uncertainties, unsure about myself, doubtful, and just really like this energy of insecurity. And it was almost like overnight, I just woke up a woman and felt this stability inside of my body, like almost for the first time in my life, and I feel like this really just comes with aging consciously and intentionally, and really being present with the initiations of being a human, as we step through these different rites of humanness. But my first two births were both with my daughter, Cara, who was really the soul that initiated me into this depth of divine union work. And when I say divine union, I don't necessarily mean between a man and a woman, but really these forces are so integral. But what I'm talking about is like deep inner union with God. Basically, my first pregnancy with her, basically immediately, how it started was this beautiful angelic soul just appeared to me one day in meditation, and she was like, stop doing these Taoist anti-contraceptive practices that you're doing, and because I'm coming in. And at this time I was with my previous partner, and I was this grid worker. I didn't have a stable business. I didn't have really good business. I had enough money to just live in my car and be a grid worker and be a young, spiritual person. But I was no place to have a child whatsoever. And she was like, doesn't matter because we're here to do it together. This is the time. I'm coming in to initiate you. Specifically, what she said was she was coming in to teach me how to materialize things from thin air. And then when she said that, she opened her hand and this flame came out of her hand. And I was bewildered, but I was so just enamored with her soul, with her energy, with how masterful and full of love, full of peace, just this presence that she had. I just trusted her. I knew that she was so wise and she was here to teach me something incredible. And a few days later, she actually showed up again. And she showed up as this massive male Mayan shaman. And that time she showed up to show me that she was really old, like her soul was ancient. She had this mastery. She was a very strong, beautiful being that was not a new baby. And from then on, I had basically a full-on telepathic relationship with this soul on a daily basis, basically all the time. And it was really this incredible experience. She guided me, to move onto my land in New Mexico. And we lived in the middle of nowhere in this desert forest in this little RV. And it was so quiet out there. The energy was so magnificent, so peaceful. And even though I was still afraid because all I could afford was, living in this RV, I was making like $600 a month doing like sessions and stuff like this. This was back in 2019 in the summer. Um, she would just consistently remind me that we were doing this together, that it's almost like she had something up her sleeve, she just had a plan. And of course, you guys know this is how I conceived Healing the Womb, my courses for women. I was basically waking up in the middle of the night and she was just like telepathically transmitting me all of these teachings from our ancestors about our light body and about the womb and the stargate and what it is to be a divine woman, a sacred keeper of a stargate portal of not only life, but creation, of source energy, of the void, and how so much of our wisdom comes from that space. And she, you know, then when after she was born, she only lived for 9 days. And the reason that she ended up dying was because she had a heart defect that made her heart too big. It was like 50% bigger than it should have been. And what happened throughout that experience, she basically was still flying like around me and communicating with me this whole time. And the process of her transitioning to the other realms is like I could already see that she had left her body, even though her body was failing. And she was just transmitting to me this knowledge about the journeys beyond this realm and how there's no separation, that death isn't an ending. But more than anything, for the next 3 days after her physical body died, she took my consciousness. Like what it felt like was like my heart broke into so many billions of pieces that it just scattered across the whole universe. And somehow through that breaking, through that absolute devastation and just complete shattering of the greatest love that I have ever experienced, somehow my heart expanded to the edges of the entire universe. And I just became one with a force that felt so full of majesty and love. And I was just there in this transcendental space for an entire 3 whole days where I was with her. She was everywhere. She was one with God and I was one with her and I was there with her. And so, yeah, that was pretty crazy. That was basically my first, like, most extraordinary experience of being what I experienced as divine union, being in union with God in this way of truly experiencing myself as not being separate at all from the cosmic oneness, from the cosmos. And it was this incredible initiation that activated my light body in this way where I'm able to now like hold this frequency in my field. And, of course, this took a lot for my human self to actually anchor because, in life, we always get these opportunities to step into initiation, but we really have to choose it. And, my human self really wanted to leave this planet. I wanted to die. I went through this tragic, dark night of the soul experience where I just didn't feel like life was worth living for anymore. And I felt like God betrayed me and all the things that we move through in grief, but eventually I came to a place where I realized that the only reason that was worthy of me staying on this planet and not just leaving because of the amount of pain I was experiencing from this loss was realizing that my soul was here to be on this mission and to serve God and to recognize that I was actually being forged into a vehicle for the truest form of love that I had ever experienced. This love that is just ever present, ever in union, that I can experience, that any human being is consistently able to be in touch with. And so through that alchemy, I was able to walk through that over the course of almost a year. It was one of the hardest things that I've ever had to walk, but obviously we're come on the other side of this. And one day I felt her come in and she said that she was coming back. And then 3 days after that, my current husband, Shane, sent me an email saying that he needed to get a session. He was at the time in my galactic shamanism school, and he was going through some stuff in his own life, and he emailed me and was like, hey, like, I really could use a session. Do you have any openings? At this point, my books were full for like the whole year, and somehow I just had this perfect little empty spot for him. It was divinely orchestrated through 2-3 days, after that point. So we got on the call. It lasted 3.5 hours because we were just talking. We ended up talking about everything, and we were basically just on the phone constantly for the next 2 months after that. It was like this love that, again, like I never experienced before. And what it felt like when we would come together and talk about the visions that we've both shared in our own life and the visions that we've seen about our future was like, in those movies where you're looking for the treasure and like there's 2 different maps, and you overlay the 2 maps on top of each other and you shine a special light on it, and a third map merges, and that's actually the real map. So literally every time we would be on the phone, that's what it felt like, because we both had a layer of the map that was missing information, missing pieces of the guidance system. But when we were together, it was like the field just opened, and we ended up just start feeling like we were on mushrooms, but in this like really deep way where it's touching all the places that were deep inside of us that we couldn't really share with other people because they just resonated. And so, from that point on, we started getting guided in doing these deep ceremonies together where we would almost go into this hypnosis space, and we started retrieving a lot of information, a lot of guidance from our soul, from our connection to God and our galactic team about the nature of our mission. And this is when a lot of the first information around the Aurora hubs actually first started coming through. So we ended up coming together in person and conceived Cara shortly after that. So this was back in now 2021. And then Cara was born in 2022. Now, I have actually shared this entire story already in this beautiful cinema audio production. You can find that link in the description. It's called Cara's Story. It's a beautiful story that, it's one of these jewels of my life. So if you haven't heard that story, I highly recommend checking that out. But after Cara was born, I say that my family really went through this dark night of the soul, because when Cara came through, her whole mission was about return of the divine feminine, the Holy Mother. Her course that I channeled or received from her was called Healing the Womb, Return of the Original Divine Mother Goddess Frequency. And I know that that's a mouthful, but that's really just her mission. It's like remembering the original essence of Holy Mother. And that work was really, really profound. But eventually what started happening was we realized that our family was literally holding space for the rehabilitation of the healing of the feminine and the masculine and their architecture of union. Because this whole false matrix is literally built on pitting those forces against each other, right? Because if you think about it, the feminine and the masculine, Holy Mother and Holy Father God, are the 2 energies of the true Trinity, the third aspect of that Trinity being the Christed force, which is the true eternal union of those forces, that they're so in this harmonious state that it is this eternal free energy, birthing energy source, fountain of life force of the Christed world, the Christed reality, right? So the true Trinity force is like Holy Mother, Holy Father, and this Christed child, the Christed creation that arises from their perfect union. And so, of course, if we have an anti-Christed force in this world that is trying to block Christ consciousness from emerging, it's going to try to distort the true mother energy. It's going to try to distort the true father energy, and it's going to try to create a split between those forces. And essentially, what my family have been processing and working through and facilitating is this deep grid work, consciousness, universal blueprint, grid work, energy work of rehabilitating those splits and those falls, both the fallen consciousness in the feminine and the fallen consciousness in the masculine, and how those breaks and traumas and fractures keep those forces from being able to exist in union in this world. So Cara was really holding space for so much of that in the first year of her life. And then we started getting these, I think, when did this happen? Okay, we were guided to go to Mo'orea in October of 2023. And so obviously we were guided to go there like earlier in 2023 because you have to plan the trip and everything. So I think it was like February or March, when I guess Cara was just maybe like 10 months old or something, that we were getting this guidance that we needed to go to Mo'orea. And Mo'orea has long been this island that represents the union, or this blueprint of perfect union between the feminine and the masculine energy. And this little island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean is literally shaped like a little heart. It's like this little angel in the middle of the ocean, literally in the center of the ocean. And we knew that we were going there to reanimate and re-anchor this true Trinity force of the feminine, the masculine, and perfect union, this Christed union energy, to restore the Christ consciousness on this planet. And so in the process of organizing that event, this idea came up that Shane felt really called to go to this 10-day Vipassana meditation retreat. And there was this little center just close to our home in Quebec, Canada at this time. We had moved there to be closer to our family when Cara was young. And again, it was like this incredible series of events. Essentially, we had this inquiry, because so oftentimes, the world is saying, oh, God is male, God is masculine. And then sometimes in the New Age community, people say, oh, well, God is female, God is feminine. And we were just trying to understand, we were like, well, what is truly this eternal realm of the living creation, this eternal God that gives birth to everything? Is it male? Is it female? What is it? And when we started asking this question, we would just get pulled into this peaceful place where it really didn't feel like it was particularly feminine or masculine. It really felt like this place where everything was present, everything and beyond what we could fathom and perceive. And so when we would move into that place, it was just this architecture of perfect love that we started to work backwards from that place. And shortly after us encountering this energy, this is like kind of our pillow talk, let's say, when we're in bed at night and the kids asleep, we're like, what is the nature of the universe? And what is God really like? What is our heart being called to serve? What is alive in our heart that we are called to steward? Like, what is this sacred consciousness that is calling us to give voice to? And shortly after that, he went to this Vipassana retreat for 10 days and was basically in contact with this, ancient emerald dragon consciousness that was showing him the architecture of this creation. And furthermore, showed us that in Ma'area, we were going there to basically conceive this metaphorical energetic dragon egg that represented the union of Holy Mother and Holy Father in the Earth's grids. So what that means is like the true original frequency of the eternal God being made available in the Earth's grids again. So much war has happened, so much fall has happened, so much intentional weaponry to cut humanity and this earth off from that eternal living God consciousness, that it was so hard to even find that true signal again, right? This is why we had to do this intentional reconnection to the true original mother goddess frequency, because there was like so many overlays and distortions and fragments of her that wasn't truly the depth of who she really was, because humans have forgotten, because these energies have been stifled from the collective experience, from the earth's grids. So the ceremony was essentially bringing back this, and the egg was the metaphor. The egg represented the inoculation, the return of this original consciousness that was going to be like a baby. It was something that we're going to have to cultivate, but it was this little spark that was going to be able to reactivate and reawaken again in the dragon lines, in the earth's grids at this point in October, through this. When we plan the trip, this is how it happens all the time, actually, is that God will tell me the dates, and then months down the line, I'll find out that it's like some crazy eclipse or some crazy alignment, and I will just not even realize that that was what God was planning. But anyway, it was over this Ring of Fire eclipse, and we end up doing this event. I think many of you guys will remember that in Moorea. So I guess 2 weeks prior to this trip was basically when Shane had just come home from this 10-day Vipassana retreat. Now, you guys remember that we conceived Cara 3 weeks after we came together in person. And I knew that this was because Cara was like, I'm coming in right now. These kids have their own timing. But because of that, we were kind of like a little bit traumatized, like on the human level, just being like, whoa, like we are way too good at making children. Like we need to just be celibate. And like I said, I know how to do this contraceptive practices, but for whatever reason, like it was not working with this baby because it was just time, it's just like divine will, human will. When it's divine will, people have had, vasectomies, and they still have miracle pregnancies, right? When it's divine will, that's just what's going to happen. So we were like, well, then we're not going to we're not going to come into union at all, because we cannot have another baby. Like it's too much with everything that we're doing. But with Shane just coming home from Vipassana, and he was just radiating with this emerald dragon energy. He was telling me about this, Templar system, and how we had to do this ceremony to inaugurate this like original union frequency consciousness into the earth's grids. And one thing led to the next. We really missed each other, and we just came together in the most beautiful union one time. And that was how Calen was conceived. This boy wasted no time. And it all just aligned so beautiful, because the intention that he had been gestating in his body through 10 days of silent meditation with the dragons, receiving just like these truly like the most holy downloads and understandings about the true Trinity, that is like this spell break. So much of the consciousness prism on this planet has to do with these false god architectures: the masculine god, the female god, the gods that hate each other, whatever the case. So much of it is just this chaotic field that blocks people from awakening in this true Christ energy. And here's this beautiful man who is so in love with this discovery in the same way that I am. And this is what called me to be completely in love with him. He just came home radiating with this energy. How could I not make love to him in that place? So anyway, having all of that, I would say his field was pregnant with this prayer. And he just came towards me with so much of this in his eyes that I feel that my body was just impregnated with this prayer, with this energy. I guess 2 weeks after that, we went to Moorea, and we went through this most extraordinary eclipse and did the ceremony with like 450 people from all over the world. It was truly incredible. And the day after the event was done, we had booked this whale um, swim of the whales journey. So we all jumped in this little boat, and of course the tour guide took us all. Oh, wow, it was so wavy. I had my toddler. I thought I was crazy, honestly. I thought I was gonna drown because it was so wavy, and the boat was small, so you're just like really going everywhere. And for a second I really thought, oh my god, I'm crazy for doing this. But eventually we got out into the ocean and we got ahead of the whales, and this beautiful, magnificent rainbow appears. And our boat is just chasing these whales, and the whales are swimming into this rainbow arc. And the whales transmit to me this whole download about these new aurora stargates that are being created through the birth of these aurora children that are bringing in this entirely new epic consciousness from the eternal God world. And the very next day, the friends that we were there with got us a pregnancy test. And that was the day that we found out we were pregnant with Calen. And so I really feel like, feeling his energy, feeling his presence, I really felt like he has such a strong whale energy. And so his nickname is Calen Balin, for Balina, which is a whale. Okay, so fast forward. You guys know that when I get to work, I'm just a workhorse. And when you live in some place like Canada and you work through the winter, your body really suffers because you are a vegetable. You're like a vegetative living being. So in the winter, if you try to go against nature, you can really harm yourself and your energy system. And so having already worked through one winter, and still having so much work to do, building the curriculum, building the healing womb and all these temples and all the work that we're doing, I knew that I needed to move to someplace. I was like, God, if you want me to do all this work, like, you need to provide me with support, because my body is literally shriveling up. Like, all it wants to do is drop all the leaves and hibernate for 6 months, because that's what everything else does in this ecosystem here. So long story short, somehow the most magical home just pops up. It's kind of hard to find rentals that are conducive for like a small family that's also an office. Somehow just the most perfect home pops up for us, like the week that we were moving, and we end up in Costa Rica. Now, I later found out that the place that we moved to is literally on my Mars line. And if I had known that we were going to be on my Mars line, I guess I'm not sure if I would have done it. But in retrospect, this is actually so incredible, because obviously the Mars energy is the masculine energy, is our active energy. So if I was wanting to get work done, there's no better place to get work done than my Mars line. But the other thing was that at this point, like I said, with Cara, she came to me before she was conceived, telling me it was time for her to be conceived. With our son, actually, I think like a week or two after Shane and I met, he got this whole download that he was going to give me a son, but he decided not to tell me at that point because, imagine what I must have thought. This man that I just met, he's telling me he's going to give me a baby. Like, that's kind of creepy. So he decided to not tell me that. But we both been feeling the soul of this child. Of course, they are just so magnificent. We knew that we were going to have a son. And so, but it wasn't ever this like conscious soul connection right from the get-go like it was with Cara. It was more like I knew he was coming. I could feel his energy, and he was kind of almost like concealing himself for a little bit until we got to Costa Rica. And then one day, he just appears in my room, giant golden ball of energy, and is such a beautiful, warm sunlight. I could feel it on my skin, and it actually brought me into such a deep purge, because I had gone through a lot of trauma with men in my life. And of course, my ancestors have as well. In China, sexism is a real thing. I was born during the one child policy. So a lot of girl children were literally murdered. Like millions of girl children were just let go because they preferred male children. And so there was so much of this anti-union, anti-masculine energy, even though it was so deep in me, like it wasn't conscious, because even up to this point, I always will talk about, loving the masculine, how the divine masculine is important. Like I knew this stuff almost like on a conscious level, and which I guess is better than nothing, because sometimes a lot of women subconsciously will just say, oh, Holy Mother is the greatest and Holy Father is just a little kid that she gave birth to, and it comes from the same place. So at least I wasn't going with it. I was conscious of the true blueprint, but deep inside of my body there was this pain, this resentment, this hatred. And it wasn't my fault. It's not my fault that it was there, but I think that as someone that is really devoted to shadow work and doing the healing work, it's just really meant a lot to me for this deep recess of the shadow that I was not aware of, a place inside of my body where pain was hiding so well that maybe my consciousness just wasn't fully ready to meet. And in that moment, I felt the true essence of the true masculine, Holy Father, in such a pure frequency, because he's still on the other side of the veil, right? He is this solid emanation of solar masculine power, beauty, love, everything. And it just made my whole body convulse and want to scream because I didn't even know, like, I don't know. It was like hatred and pain, everything all up in one. And so at some point he came up to me because I was writhing in the bed, and he's like, "Let me help you out. Do you hate me?" And I just felt the purity of his essence and like who he truly was, like he comes from the heart of Holy Father, like we all do, but he's still on the other side, and he's an Aurora child. So he's carrying that original signal of the true Holy Father energy. And I just start bawling and I'm crying so much. And that was kind of him initiating me into this energy. Now, so shortly after the Morea event, we were already planning on doing this second part because we conceived this dragon egg in October during the eclipse, but then 9 or 10 months after that, we were meant to hatch this dragon egg and fully allow this original energy of consciousness of true God to be made manifest in the Earth's grids. And that was what we were doing in Ireland, right? And so this is why we were planning to actually conceive him. This was our plan. And then there was God's plan, which is so much more elegant, as you can see. But our plan was that we would conceive him in January, do the event in Ireland, or at the time we thought we were going to do it in Hawaii, and we were going to do the event and then come home and then give birth to him. So that was our whole plan. And Calen was like, just kidding. I'm going to be here. In fact, I'm going to be such a big part in this whole event. You guys don't even know, but I conceived this event. I helped God bring this event into existence. And so we were faced with this decision. We could either not do this event and be sane people, just go through the pregnancy, give birth to him, do the event some other year, right? But the thing is that when God says this is the time, we can't always ask why. Kind of like the Moray event when God said, these are the dates to the event. I can't be like, well, I'm busy that day. How about this other day? Because then it wouldn't line up with the dates and the purpose and the reason why God said it to be that day to begin with. And so this is why we just have to say yes and trust the process. And so obviously my mind was like, I can't give birth in another continent that I've never been to. I can't just waddle over there when I'm 9 months pregnant, give birth to a baby, and then run this conference for 150 people to inaugurate a consciousness into the Earth's grids that's been, missing or dormant for who knows how long, like 6 weeks after he's born. I can't do that. And God was like, well, I wouldn't have planned it if you couldn't do it. So this is where you got to just decide if you're on board or not. And obviously, at this point in my life, I've already been so on board with life itself that I'm like, well, I guess I don't really have a choice. Like, we're doing this, you know? So then that's when, you're like, well, I'm pretty sure this is supposed to happen. Let me just go get an Akashic Records reading. Let me just go get, the psychic reading. Let me just go talk to this person that talks to spirit babies. And it was basically unanimous. Everybody was like, this baby wants to be born in Ireland. And we were like, okay, let's work on that then. So I have a friend. Her name is Zoe Daly. She runs Aru Wool, which is this incredible New Earth Irish wool company. And she, of course, is from Ireland. And I tell her, like, hey, pretty sure Calen wants to be born in Ireland. And she goes, for some reason, I already knew that. I just didn't want to say anything because that's like super weird. And so she happened to have met this lady who was plugged into the free birth community in this little town just south of where we were going to run the event, south of Dublin, in the Wicklow Mountains, which is like a place that is very, very sacred, close to Glendalough, which is, again, a very, very sacred place, sacred land. And we get plugged into this woman that's already guided like 10 people in free birthing. So she just told us exactly the documents that we needed to evade, any sort of consciousness, any sort of pressure from the government or whatever. And so this is like months and months ahead, right? Like the dragons just give us this whole game plan. And then she was like, in order to get these documents really easily, it would be best if you guys had like a legal marriage certificate. And so we were like, okay, well, I guess we have to just get married. Like we were in Cara story, I told you guys about how we were married by a crystal skull on Mount Shasta without our knowing, was like this divinely orchestrated thing. So we had been spiritually married, but we were not like literally married. So it was almost like this, experience kind of forced us to get married in a way. But I had so many visions at this point that Shane and I have this sort of spiritual arranged marriage from our ancestors as well, because I come from like all these powerful bloodlines and this energy that courses like bloodlines of wisdom, right? Like these dragon teachings that come from the descendants, come from my children. They ultimately come from also the ascended ancestors. And so I have seen our wise ancestors coming together and shaking hands and throwing everything on the table, just being like, this union is for the goodness of the world. And it's time for these powerful families to actually come together and work together. And this is the only way we're going to be able to overcome what is happening on the planet. So anyway, long story short, we decided that we were going to get married, and we had met this metaphysical minister. There's this little township called Aurora right next to the township that my parents live in. And so we were like, let's just go there, find this little park in the middle of this town. We're going to have our parents be there, and we're just going to get married. And I think this was like in May, basically right before we were going to Europe for the summer. I'm like, I guess 7 months pregnant. I wanted to basically get there, a month or two beforehand, just in case anything happens. Like you can't just like go to a continent and just give birth. I was like, we should be there on that land at least a month before. But we ended up getting married in May, right around Beltane, which is when the Irish people actually get married, because it's about the spring fire of life and fertility. And of course, I didn't really plan any of this. It's just God planning it. And I end up getting this hand fasting thing with like, this Celtic rope, like a hand tying ceremony. And our metaphysical minister was there. We just heard our parents there. We chose this little park on Soleil Boulevard, which means sun Street in Aurora, Ontario. And that night was when the auroras just flew all around the planet. I don't know if you guys remember that. In May, there was a day when the aurora borealis was just appearing in places where it was not appearing in places before, like in Ireland, in North Carolina. People were seeing it in Canada, just in all these different places. It was like this spectacular thing. When I woke up in the morning, all I could see on every social media account was just people posting pictures of the aurora borealis. And Shane and I had literally just gotten married in the town of Aurora that very day, as this part of this prayer of anchoring and returning Holy Mother, Holy Father's union onto the planet. And we really just feel so humbled to get to witness these synchronicities and these experiences, because I feel like I'm like this technician. I really just feel like I'm just this representative that is like communicating. I'm just speaking and giving voice to what is occurring in the collective on the planet. And what is occurring is this resurgent return of the true, original, eternal Holy Mother, Holy Father union consciousness, which of course is the return of Christ on the planet. And to just be on this mystery journey and seeing all these confirmations, like getting married around Beltany, trying to go to Ireland, and then the auroras, just like, you can imagine the kind of feelings that we were just like, oh my God, we're on the right path. This is what we're meant to do. Because again, it is a crazy undertaking. You got to question yourself at some point when you're doing it, like, am I insane? And then things like that just really keep us going. Okay, so now we end up flying to England, I think at the end of May. My mom comes with us because she's just, I come from China where family culture is really, really important. She really wanted me to give birth close to her. But then when she realized that I wasn't going to listen to her, because, she's my mom, she knows me, that she knows that once God tells me something, there's no thing that can change my mind. So the next thing she said was, well, fine, wherever you give birth, I'm going to be there. And that just touched me so much. We tell her our plan that we're going to be in Europe for 3 whole months. We're going to be giving birth there and then running this conference. And she was just down. She was down for the ride. And I have so much respect for my mother for just choosing that and taking that on for the family. So we journeyed to England at the end of May because we wanted to check out, these different places as well, Glastonbury, Stonehenge. We actually wanted to do the entire Spine of Albion, but I was so pregnant at this point that like sitting in the car for a couple hours was just giving me crazy cramps. And so I was like, we're scrapping that whole plan and we're just going to hang out in the south of the UK in the English countryside for a week or however long we were there. And then we're going to take the ferry to Ireland from there. We decided that we were going to take the ferry into Ireland because that was just the easiest way and the most inconspicuous way. So we are hanging out in Glastonbury for a few days. That's just where we ended up because we were going to, again, drive all the way up Scotland. I was like, actually, we're not doing that. My body cannot handle it. So we just end up, kind of in Glastonbury, just recouping our energy and just staying there for a few days. And it was here that I started getting all of this messages from my son that he needed to be in the UK to work with the false king of tyranny grids there. Of course, like the fallen king architecture is super strong in those grids. And this was like after like the King Charles had been put in. And there was just a lot of that energy that was very alive in the grids. And he started telling me that he had this crazy plan. And I was like, I don't like the sound of that. Like, just take it easy on your old mama because I'm super pregnant. And just whatever your plan is, just making sure that it's not too crazy. And the next thing I know, I do this live stream inside of ISA, and then we go to this little organic food store across the street, and I get this perfect banana. It didn't have any brown spots on it. It was this perfectly yellow, bright banana. I'm like, I'm gonna eat this. Boy, was I wrong to eat that banana. I just immediately have this worst stomach ache ever, and I start throwing up. I start purging for the next 6 hours, okay? And essentially what I started seeing was, even though obviously I'm not from that side of the planet, my husband is. He's got Scottish, Irish, lineage in that way of the world. And I could feel, when a woman becomes pregnant with a baby, the baby's blood actually gets into the mother's bloodstream. So the mother starts to carry that DNA. So it was incredible to actually begin to read the files. Obviously, Cara had been um, I'd been pregnant with Cara and had been raising her for many years. And she actually, when I was pregnant with her, I had a dream where she had this whiteboard and she was drawing all these connections. She's like, okay, so dad has these bloodlines and these connections and these energies. And then mom has these energies. And she was drawing all these lines, like these crazy connections. And she was showing me kind of just how profound this union and specifically calculated this union was. So it was kind of like that. I started being able to tap in to my husband's lineages and actually really I was able to start to heal and support his lineage. And he was able to support my lineage. And it was just this really profound experience, actually, because I could see that some of my ancestors that were holding some specific medicine and wisdom, and that was helping rehabilitate some of the fallen facets of and traumatized and damaged DNA information of his lineage. And then there were parts of his lineage that was doing the same thing for my lineage. And what ended up happening was, when I was having this food poisoning, every time I would have to go, and oh my God, it was the worst pain. I was honestly scared because I was like, what, 7.5, 8 months pregnant, very, very pregnant. And it's really scary for pregnant women to get food poisoning. And actually, that's just the medical system regurgitating. Like, that's a program that was seeded into my consciousness to make me afraid, because my body knew exactly what she was doing. It was actually not that dangerous, but like they try to say it's dangerous because then your body's afraid and then complications can happen. But anyway, because those fears are very normal and inoculated into my brain, I was a little bit scared because I was having crazy cramps. It hurt a lot. And there I was, just like throwing up every 10 minutes, every 15 minutes. And every time I threw up, I would see a vision of a king, a fallen king, one generation of the fallen king, because for what I guess this bloodline is coming through that lineage. And Shane has told me some stuff about what he has found out. For me is very different because I have like the most common last name in the world. So it's Wang. And so I can't find out like anything about my lineage through my last name. It all comes through meditation, which at this point I've gotten a lot of information, but for him, he's able to track so much information just through his family's last names. And so here's my son. He's like, don't worry, mom, you're not going to die. I'm not going to come early. It's all okay. But every single time I would see this king and all of this like black magic, right? Because these false kings are using rituals and blood magic and all sort of this awful stuff to perpetuate their power. They have stolen and killed different lineages to steal their genetics and to just do all this awful stuff to sustain power. Right. And here was my baby on the other side. And we're doing this crazy alchemy thing where I'm throwing up. And every time I throw up, I would see a different king and a spell being broken in the lineage of this king all the way. So it started in the lower in the UK, and then it went all the way up to the north into Scotland. So it was almost like this movement of the lineage as it descended down the Albion Isles. Okay, so that was crazy. I was like, please don't make me do that again. That was awful. So we ended up then going to Ireland, and um, the Airbnb that we ended up staying in was so beautiful. There was this beautiful garden outside, and unfortunately, it only had one small, tiny bathroom, though. So that was kind of hard for a pregnant lady, a grandma, a toddler, and a man to all share this tiny bathroom in our bedroom. Was kind of challenging. But besides that, it was really just this idyllic thing. And what was really funny was like the whole time, a lot of my friends were like, if you ever feel challenged, just pray to Mother Mary, because she had to go on this pilgrimage when she was really pregnant, and then she gave birth in a barn. And at least you're not going to be giving birth in a barn. So you should be grateful about that. And we get to this place, and the lady starts telling us about the history of this Airbnb. And she was like, yeah, so that used to be the barn, and cows used to live and give birth in there. And we were like, this is weird. It was just so funny. Anyway, we get into this Airbnb and we stay there. I think we got there beginning of June, so this is only 2 weeks. He was due on the solstice, actually. So his due date was the solstice. So I thought, Cara was late both times that she was born. She went all the way to 42 weeks. So I thought, no problem. I'm going to go probably till the first week of July. We have a month for me to stretch and get my body ready. And we get to this Airbnb, and I was so sore, so stressed. I was like, oh my God, this is scary because my body is all shriveled up, and this is when we can have complications. And God sends like the most incredible doula. Her name was Lenka, and she ended up being my postpartum doula. And I had a couple of sessions with her before and just got my body all ready. Then 7 days before Calen was born, Shane was like, I have to start fasting. So he starts on a water fast. 7 days. He was like, I'm going to just go on this fast because I think he really wanted to be in that spiritual space. He wanted to be he delivered Cara by himself. This man just turned into like the most incredible midwife. I was like kind of shocked because the whole time, months before her birth, I was trying to get him to watch these documentaries with me, like free birth documentaries, because I had given birth one time already, and I kind of knew what I was getting myself into, but I was worried about him. I was concerned because, I've seen videos of men like passing out in in the hospital room. So I was like, oh my God, like, is this man going to pass out? So let's watch some documentaries. And he was just like not interested. And I was like, man, like, I hope he's gonna be okay. Like, when I started going into labor, this man, some reason, he was like, I feel like I've done this 100 times before. He just like went right into midwife state and was just like so present with me. I felt so safe. And the baby was born in like an hour, and he just caught the baby and he just knew exactly what to do. I was shocked. So anyway, he's like, yeah, like that's definitely not the first time that we've done that. Like, I'm pretty sure we've done that like 100 times apparently. So anyway, he wanted to be even more prepared this time because obviously he feels very connected to this boy, to the son. And he goes on this 7-day water fast. And the morning that he was breaking his fast, he was making bone broth. He started the bone broth the night before he was going to break his fast with this bone broth. It was June 15th. The night before, was it the night before? I can't remember exactly now, but one of those final nights, I had this dream about the false king of the UK who, is doing these rituals that is starting to come out. And in my dream, we were on like another planet. This is a crazy thing. Like, they were trafficking people off planet somehow and doing their rituals on a neighboring planet that was close to this one. That's just what I saw. Like, I don't know. Don't take that as reality. Like, it could have been a metaphor because of the dream realms or whatever. But I heard the word Pinder Cafe, and Pinder is a demonic force that is like involved and underneath this like human child stuff, ritual abuse kind of black magic stuff. So in my dream, again, we were specifically breaking these spells around this false king. And June 15th is the trooping of colors. Okay, this is the day that the UK actually celebrate the birth of their monarch, their king and queen, regardless of when their birthday is. Like for the past 260 years or however long, they've been celebrating the birthday of their king on June 15th. It's like this whole celebration. They have like this whole parade in the palace or whatever. I don't know anything about the royal families. But anyway, Calen decides that this was going to be the day that he's going to be born. And so in the morning, I go into labor, and Shane is just breaking his fast, right? He's just done his 7 days. He was like, oh my God, I can't believe the timing of that. And he comes in, we're in labor. I labor really fast. I'm just so in tune with my body. Just like I did a lot of training and healing with Cara. This is why we do a lot of womb work. I'm really passionate about restoring the birth canal and the birthing process and all of that in the womb temple. But basically, my births have ranged from 45 minutes to 2 hours at the most. And 2 hours was my first birth. Cara came out in 45 minutes. And I think Calen was about an hour and a half. So I knew that he was going to come quick. Shane is just trying to chug his bone broth, trying to break his fast. And as Calen was being born, I saw the collapse of the 666 grid, the 666 spell, which is essentially, I saw it so clearly, so simple. It was just the spell that says that matter and creation and reality is not sacred. That's the spell. That's the inversion. Right? Because number 6 is a pregnant woman, is literally the number for matter, for creation, for the feminine, for the womb. And so when we have a 6 and it's being inverted into something evil, like in a Christed reality, there's no number that represents the devil. Like there's no, like every number is sacred. Right? So they've hijacked this number, and now they've made, so my whole thing is taking that back, making 666 actually holy again, because that's literally the triple goddess, the triple creation force energy, the Trinity creation force that they're trying to invert into the Satan, whatever. And as Calen was being born, he just collapsed that field and pulled through in my body that all of creation, all of matter, there's no part of matter that is not sacred. And they're trying to take matter and use perversion to create these satanic pockets of consciousness on this planet, in this reality. But the truth of the matter is that all of creation is actually sacred. And he was helping collapse this spell on the trooping of colors. Something else that was very interesting was that I actually experienced a very orgasmic birthing process. And what I learned was that the presence of the Father is almost like the key that unlocks it. And the reason for that is because when a woman is in a birthing process, feeling like safe to be able to completely let go and to completely be like overtaken with that somatic experience of literally opening a portal to another dimension and giving birth to a whole new life, like that requires a lot of space to be held, a lot of shamanic presence. And I really do feel like this was the reason why Shane decided to literally fast for 7 days, because, as a man, to get into that same kind of shamanic space, because I have a womb and I'm literally growing a body inside of my body, it's like a natural thing that my body goes into the other realms. And for him, he had to prepare for it. And he was just called and he responded by going on this fast. And because of that, I really truly experienced just the most immense joy and actual pleasure. Like the contractions were pleasurable. And this was confirmation for this theory that I've had. Again, with the 666 spell and creation being painful, creation being traumatizing, life is hard, life is painful, right? All of this is like the inversion that is inside of our light body that creates that. And I've been trying to break the spell since my first birth with Cara. During her birth, we were going into the curse of Eve, which was, it was the woman's fault for getting us kicked out of the Garden of Eve. And that's why birth is painful, because we're cursed, and we're being punished forever. And that's why it hurts. But that's literally the insert. That's the programming. And so when she was coming in, I remember feeling the pain of that and then breaking through that spell and experiencing like an orgasmic rush at the end of her birth, but it was still really intense and really painful. But with this third birth, I experienced, what it truly feels like to, that experience really helps. And to feel the full presence of the masculine that not only can protect you in the physical, but can also access the other realms. Like there's this belief that, men aren't spiritual and men can't connect to the spiritual realms, and that women are so much more spiritual than the men. And this is why we feel so unsafe and we feel so unsupported. It's like, this is a narrative that we're regurgitating that is perpetuating the men being cut off from spirit. And the truth of the matter is that the males have always been wizards, magicians, kings, oracles, shamans, right? There's all these masculine archetypes of that magic blueprint that the males have been castrated from, and then the females are perpetuating it, and it's part of this gender war thing. But anyway, long story short, it was crazy and awesome to see my husband just, this is what I say, like, he's not a perfect person by any means. He's gone through so much trauma. We had this whole dark night of the soul. Like he was in a freeze state. He was in the underworld. Like it was crazy hard. But when it comes down to it, in the moments when I really needed him, like for a man to be able to midwife souls, like this is an extraordinary human being that is so worthy of my patience and my compassion as a woman. And this was like another big part of it, was like realizing and breaking through these like false love spells. Like we have this idea that like true love is like getting swooped off your feet and like feeling like you're just in a fairy tale. And like, yeah, it does feel like that a lot of the time. But I feel like when it really when my love and his love, when it really counted, was when I needed him and he was there. And when he needed me and I was there, no matter what, like when we first met, I was still so heartbroken from Cara having died. Like I was such a mess. And that was just like a human thing. We're human beings. I went through such an incredibly hard experience. And sometimes I would just, be in such an emotionally distraught state. And he was there for me. He wasn't like, oh, you're not meeting my expectation. You're not meeting my needs. Like you're not, being the love that I wanted. Like true love is more than that. It carries more substance than that. It's like true love is willing to go into the deepest shadow to retrieve the pieces of itself that it cares about. And this was like a true Grail Queen code, because I'm seeing a lot of the divine feminine collective right now that's like in that immature maiden princess, like false princess architecture that expects the masculine to like show up as a knight, show up perfect, show up and just be everything. Meanwhile, she's not really willing to express that true devotion that the feminine is so capable of, like the power that comes from the depth of devotion to creation. That's like, and these were a lot of the keys that were embedded in the island of Ireland. So this was like this whole integrated alchemical thing that was unfolding through the fractal unit of my family, and then the fractal of the land of the Ireland and the ancient stories that were embedded there, and like the traumas and the masculine feminine rifts, but also the like original stories. And this is where my beloved friend Zoe, who was like another true Grail queen. Like so many of like the truly embodied like Grail queen energy that I've seen are like really women that like don't, you don't hear me claiming it. Like I don't really talk about this stuff, right? I'm not saying like, oh, like we're so amazing. It's like we're really too busy upholding these pillars. Like she is someone that just truly um let's just say she was so devoted to the resurrection of the grids, right? Like, despite any hardship that happens in life, what was the most important thing was fulfilling the covenant. And there was this incredible story. Like, the first night that we got to Ireland, I had this dream. And this sets the tone to kind of the grid work that we were doing there. I had a dream that I had this baby blue bull, and I was holding this baby blue bull and I was protecting it from, and like these like demons were trying to like um basically program it with like pornography, like this perversion that has infected the masculine. It was trying to get to this blue bull, and I was just like protecting this blue bull and making sure that he wasn't getting infected by this demonic consciousness. Now, then, my son was born during a true sky Taurus stellium, meaning he has like 5 or 6 planets in the sign of Taurus, and he is in the sun sign of Taurus. So this true bull energy, when I talked to my friend Zoe, who is very, very well versed in ancient Irish lore, mythology, she tells me the story about this goddess who, I'm so sorry, Zoe, her name completely evades me right now. You're going to have to remind me. But essentially, the popular story, maybe one of you guys can share this with me. Basically, it's this goddess who, the story is that she like stole some bull, and it's this whole thing. It was like this awful thing. But she was tracking how so many of these mythological stories of Ireland were actually about divine union, but then got distorted to be about anti-union, which makes so much sense. Okay, because remember, Ireland is in the high heart of the Pangea grid. The Pangea grid, I have other videos, I won't go into it. This is all the downloads that were coming in from that time. But the Pangea grid is basically the inner child original blueprint of the soul of the earth. So the pure original consciousness of the soul of the earth. And it was when the earth was this little baby dragon shape, the land mass of Pangea. And Ireland, Scotland, this cluster of islands are in the high heart complex of Pangea, meaning that's where the blueprint is held, the master blueprint. And what is the master blueprint of this Christed planet? It's that true Trinity architecture, Holy Mother, Holy Father in union, not one of them above each other, right? They're so in love. This love that binds them is the generator, is the unlimited source creation, free energy device of life, of birthing. So this is the energy that's meant to be embedded in the land, and for so long it was. And from the research of my beloved friend Zoe Daly, she has been studying this mythology, and she realized that so many of the stories have been distorted from their original codes. And so when she read the story, she realized that this goddess, she actually stole the bull to protect him, right? So there are these goddesses that knew that the architecture was going to fall, and um they've been almost like holding the original consciousness of the masculine like a flame. They've been in such deep devotion that not for a moment throughout the fall, this was a big message from Ireland, the landmass as well, was that there has been not a moment in time when Mother Earth, the divine mother feminine energy, that she was confused about who the true masculine was. right? There's this whole spell in the world that's like, oh, the masculine fell and the masculine destroyed everything, and it was all the masculine's fault. And and the feminine, we're so traumatized. We're just these victims, right? The masculine hurt us. And on one layer of the reality, that's true, but that narrative actually fuels the antichrist narratives, because the whole reality is that both the whole reality fell, and the way that it fell wasn't a specific architecture, but the fall happened through the intention of God, and through you know there was just intention behind it. Like, there was a reason why God and why the creation chose to go down this path. And that true love that the feminine holds for the masculine holds for the feminine, it was never tarnished. You just have to reach deep inside of us enough. We just have to reach deep inside of us enough to find the place where that purity and innocence still exists. And so, this blue bull, basically, bulls in Irish mythology represents the masculine, the high masculine. And that's exactly what, we were doing there, was to support in the resurrection of the masculine. And so many things happened because, I think that there was a lot of this spell that was cast over the land, over the priestesses there, and this was the primary thing that we were going there to correct in the grids. Because it's in this high heart complex, it's almost like having a thorn in your heart. It's like when the goddess feels resentment and unsafety and hatred towards the masculine, and is like, I'm actually so much more powerful than you. I actually am the greatest, whatever. It's like this thorn in the divine feminine's heart. And when that's there, it's the space in which the antichristed splitting can continue, right? And that's the place that this energy makes us emasculate our men, feel like the men are just meant to be our little puppy dogs, and oh, they're poor, these men, they don't know anything about spirituality. I hope that they heal themselves. Let me mother them, right? This energy that ends up emasculating instead of remembering the true high king, beauty, power, magnificence, magic of the masculine. Instead of, like, when we don't feel intimidated by that, when we feel like we just are like the eternal equal match union of that masculine archetype, and we don't feel afraid of a man's power, and in fact we actually pray for it. Like, that's what I experienced there, is that I felt the depth of my prayer and devotion for the masculine, for men, and it was lived through my true devotion to my husband and now my son. And that energy was what I was bringing as my gift to the land of Ireland, because it was this imbalance that was there, that was anchoring this distortion in the collective planetary field. And because of this, I actually met a lot of resistance in Ireland. And this is not anyone's fault. It's just like, when in the process of healing, because that comes from such deep pain, that need for the Divine Mother to be in a higher place, in a hierarchy to Holy Father. It comes from such a deep, it's that thorn in the heart that I was talking about. And for me, it's like, I'm way more devoted to the eternal Christ than to my pain and to my desire to feel powerful. I can retrieve my power within myself. I can heal the trauma, and I can be in devotion to the forces of union. And that's what I learned about myself and about the importance of this through my family on the land of Ireland. There were a lot of oracles and priestesses that have seen this vision of my son being born there. That was really weird. But anyway, it's just, again, confirmation for the things that I'm experiencing. And, I really feel like, as a human being, we can't get in over our head about this stuff. Like, I don't think that my son is like, any special being. I mean, he really is. But what we are messengers. It's not like, oh, like I gave birth to Jesus. Okay, it's nothing like that at all. It's more just recognizing that because we have the consciousness to witness it, we have this sacred duty to just be messengers of this thing that's happening on a planetary level. And Calen, the word comes from Calen, calendar, like messenger. So what I really saw was my son was a timekeeper, a messenger for the return of Holy Father on this planet. And I was experiencing this alchemy in real time on the planet through all of this that was happening. And so anyway, hope that you're enjoying the story. I know that was a kind of a long story, but this is all so important to me to share with you because, this work for me, it's not about the number of people or like the following or the money or any of that stuff. Like this is like what I'm willing to do is just give this my whole life. Like my whole life, there's nothing else. Even when I'm giving birth, it's grid work and I love it because I'm just so like, this is what I came to earth for. And this is from the place that I teach, right? This is the place that I receive the depth of what I'm teaching and what I'm sharing in the space that I'm holding. It's not from reading any books. It's not even from like channeling. It's not from any videos from the external world, but it comes from such a deep, personal, very, very deep initiations. And they come from these very intense, deep human emotions and spiritual experiences that are real, that come from a deep place that like only my organic soul could remember through interfacing with real life experiences. And this is why I really feel like, my work, it is very, very transformative and powerful because it's not me. Like God is literally molding me into a medicine maker. And God is molding me through these experiences that, yes, I've had to say yes to over and over and over and over again. None of this has been given to me easily by any means. Because, 6 weeks after Calen was born, we were facilitating this event for 150 people. And this event was not easy to organize. My event coordinator ditched us halfway through. There were beings that were trying to stop this event from happening because, again, we're talking about 150 angelic starseeds in the high heart of the Pangea grid, resurrecting this original consciousness into the planetary grid. I mean, this was like a big thing that we accomplished together and required a lot of training. This ceremony at the Hill of Tara, which was actually the high heart of Ireland, it was this whole thing. My husband and I had to organize this event with our amazing support, Noko. You guys know her. But the three of us, were calling bus companies and catering companies and dealing with the hotel, every single thing 2 weeks before we were about to give birth. And all through the 6 weeks of our postpartum, we were holding the space. And then the event was just, incredible. It was life-changing and it was just so beautiful because I'm always so touched by the caliber of humans that we gather because, some of my favorite testimonials are from some of you guys that say there's just no new age weirdness. Carter, that's what he said. I love that so much. It's just like the simplest way to put it. And it was just so much joy, so much innocence, so much homecoming. And that's the only place within which, truly profound and deep grid work can happen. Not through this, we're so important. Look at all the stuff that we know about, the 12 dimensions. Now we're going to do this. It's like all there needs to be is this deep, profound love for God. And, that is the space in which we can come together to do the most incredible work. And, this is the kind of stuff that we've been doing. It's hard to tell these stories, when we're going through it because there's so much that's happening behind the scenes. And we were, because we had that stack of papers this is crazy. We got Calen's passport by going to this office, the passport office, the Canadian embassy. We had this appointment. We went in there. We got like approved for his passport in 30 minutes. And then they told us that we can pick up his true real passport in the embassy of Costa Rica. Like we didn't even have to go back to Canada to get his passport because we just were so protected by the dragons. And I know that there's some people out there that are like spreading rumors about me and my family and these events and stuff. But like when you just like look at the details, like so many things could go wrong with that scenario. But we were so held by God. Like throughout this process, we had a crazy person that was emailing us, like giving us death threats, like telling, like specifically Shane, like saying this crazy psychotic stuff that he was gonna like hurt him physically. And we had to get security for the event. I mean, there's some crazy psychic retaliation that happens with these things, but we were just so cocooned. Everything that could have gone right went well beyond what we could have even imagined. And we just wouldn't be able to do any of this without that force that is guiding us and initiating us and instructing us. And we're just like listening as best as we can and really being willing to go to places, willing to do the work, willing to excavate and be healed, receive the medicine when God is sharing it, you know, willing to do that deep work on the go, super pregnant, food poisoning, and still all that is on our heart is just this important work that we're so honored to do, you know, just to like be able to have eyes to even witness these things is just, that's like worth it all. And so I hope that you enjoyed this story time. I'm going to open up for questions in just a second. But this is the spiritual depth from which we are entering into the Cygnus gateway with in 2 days. On Friday, we start our 4-day angelic grid work, planetary resurrection work. You know, it's really a continuation of all of that I just spoke about. We are dismantling these false evil magic grids through the resurrection of this original intelligence, this original consciousness. I feel that after everything that I've gone through with my womanly body, with my children through my birth, that there probably really isn't a better guide and facilitator to hold us through this experience. I feel pretty confident about that at this point. I've done these events many times and I just come at it with just an honest heart. You know, what I really want is just to create a pristine space where we can all feel united and appreciated. You know, one of the testimonials that I got from somebody was like, they really feel like a participant and not just going along for the ride, not just listening to me talk, but really appreciated for your presence because your gifts and your codes are what makes this work happen. And I feel like what I, you know, in a symphony, there's like a conductor and the conductor just holds the space so that we can all be unified. And I really feel like I've been trained to guide, but not be in the way, right? Guide, but not be too overly present, if you know what I mean. Like, I don't really need to be important or in the spotlight. Like, all I really want is for us to be able to get the job done and get into the synchronized field. So I really do feel like those are the reasons why these events are so loved and so looked forward to by our star-seeded family. And so I really, really can't wait for us to get into the depth. Because again, this is just where I live. And it feels so good to share the story from the beginning because this is just how I live my life. You know, this is the place that I run all of my classes, all of my events. It's not from me needing to do anything or come make it up. It's just like everything is being guided. Everything is coming from that place of being a part of this mission. And to be honest, I don't think I'm going to make the land payment this time. Hopefully, I'll get a 2-month extension because I'm opening the womb temple again in a couple months. But regardless, um, I'm basically doing everything that I can to support this mission, including the crazy stuff that I just told you. But while I was doing all of that, I somehow was able to come up with this money for this land payment as well. And I think God is really just making an example out of me, you know? Showing you guys, how incredible and magical it can be. Like, you guys, when we got married and just seeing the auroras fly like all around the planet, like there are no words for that kind of feeling. But like that didn't happen because we're special. Like it's just like we're so willing to listen. We're so willing to do what God asks us to do, because that would not have happened if we were like, oh, you know what? I'm gonna be too pregnant. I don't think I can do that. And which was like a perfectly reasonable thing for my human self to choose. If I had, like, I don't think anyone would have batted an eye if I had chosen that. But to receive those confirmations after the Ireland event, having 6 straight days of sunshine when we were doing our Sacred Sites tour, where even the Irish people were like, this is wild weather for us. We were there for months and it rained every other day. Irish weather is kind of famous. People make jokes about it. And for there to be 6 straight days of beautiful sunshine for our Sacred Sites tour, like things like that just makes you really come into humility, because it's not like, oh my God, look what we did. It's like we didn't do anything. We just were so willing to listen that God blessed us with revelation, you know? And there's no deeper honor, there's no deeper awe. Like that's the experience that I almost like chase in life, to just feel close to God, to feel like I'm making a difference and I'm listening and God is saying, yes, you're doing the right thing. You're on the right path. There's no greater feeling. And that's the feeling that I want every single one of you to feel every single day. It's possible. It's right there for you. Um, all of this is like available to every single person, but really like there needs to be such a willingness to just say yes to that guidance, so that you end up in a place where magic and miracles are just unfolding every step of the way. So I hope that I will see you at the Cygnus Gateway. It's starting on Friday in 2 days. You can find the link. I'm also including the Laniakea. If you have a ticket to that, you already have it, so don't worry about that. But yeah, the link is in the description. I will post the link again in here as well. And then I'm going to Jeremy says, when you're in a medicine space with Z, it's like nothing to do at is said or done takes you out of the meditation. You just sink deeper and deeper into oneness. And that's my experience. Thank you so much, Jeremy, for saying that. I really try to be so sensitive to your experience. Like I try to speak as little as possible and just try to be as non-present, right? Non in your experience as I can. And that's something that I really do try to pay attention to. So let's say Paravel says, no one is doing like you, starting a revolution, Z. Thank you so much. I, again, feel so honored. I'm not really doing anything besides going with it. All of this magnificence is God's imagination. Like I can't make it up. I can't make up my son saying he's clearing the false kings and then he's born on the trooping of colors. I'm like, I don't know. He's doing something. It's incredible. I'm not doing any of it. And at the same time, I hope that by sharing these stories, like the reason, and I hope you can feel my heart, the reason why I'm sharing these stories is that I really feel is important to reflect to you that this is just what happens when a person comes into union with God and start to live from that place. I'm not special. I'm not like, oh, I'm this amazing person and look at me, God has chosen me. Like that is not why God is wanting me to share these stories one bit. The reason why I'm sharing is because this magic is available to everyone, because that is just life. This is just life and how amazing our God is. So, Just scrolling through some of these today. So yeah, the Cygnus Gateway event, continuation of the resolution of the 666 false, satanic inversion spells. We're going to be clearing this stuff out of our body, out of the Earth's grids, out of the interdimensional layers, which is just going to help humans wake up. We're going to inaugurate, we're going to work with the original Holy Mother, Holy Father, Christ, Trinity frequencies. Again, these frequencies that were inoculated into my body through very, very deep and intense initiations that I'm very, very honored to get to hold on behalf of our collective and to support you in coming into a union and alignment with them. And then just really feeling honored that the angelics are going to come together to do this amazing work together. It truly is incredible. Jeremy says, how to come back to healing instead of being stuck in the pain body? Great question. God, union with God, calling on God, allowing the miracle medicine of God's love to come into our body. We're going to be talking about this. I think I can't remember. I think maybe day 3, we're going to be talking about this in the Cygnus Gateway. But essentially, this is the cheat code. The miracle medicine, right, is leaning on our innocence. We're not doing this ourselves. The antidote to these pain body, phantom satanic energies, infestations, is the spark of innocence. And that spark of innocence is the place in which we are in union with God. When we remember that eternally innocent part of ourself, we can pull that into our body and into those spaces. And it's a miracle medicine of God that can work for us, right? Karen says, do you feel like that grid alignment has rippled across the world? Have you experienced shifts? Absolutely. Think about what is happening on the world stage right now, right? Vaccines are being banned. I mean, I don't even want to name everything that's happening, but I'm not saying that these events are causing those things. It's about alignment. It's about God's timing, right? So supporting in the grid, it's not that we are making magic happen. It's that we are aligning to God's timing and participating in God's grand symphony. So one thing I've noticed immediately after the 888 ceremonies were the amplification of the Aurora core technologies, which are this light field is using the crystalline core. It's this antibiotic field healing system that comes from the God worlds. That system has been turned on and has amplified since the 888. People have gone through miraculous healing during that time. Their ancestral, their families were healing, like ancestral magic was happening during the event. I mean, there were so many stories of people experiencing like network effects from these events. And again, it's not because of anything I'm doing. It's really just what a convergence is. When God says this is the place at this time during this alignment with these people, there is forces beyond our understanding that are operating at the same time. And these time capsules are unlocking. And what's another thing that I was going to say is I feel like people are waking up in mass. And I think that this is going to continue to happen, right? It was an inauguration. That's what we called it, this inauguration of the Emerald Covenant. And a lot of things have happened in my own life since then that are the beginning. Like my mission started in a way. And I know that it looks like I've been on mission since this whole time, but I'm able to communicate on a deeper level. I'm able to be more forthright in my public shares. And I feel like those were timeline shifts that has occurred since then. But you guys that were there in Ireland, you tell me what you experienced. Gabby says, let's help our sweet Z build a temple monastery for starseeds. Thank you, Gabby. I would love for that help. Lisa says, the last gateway call was so transformative and inspiring. Highly, highly recommended. Thank you for sharing that so much. Thank you, Solana. She says, what an amazing account. You have done an incredible, huge thanks to you. Thank you so much. Again, I think I just said yes and got to experience craziness. It was when I first got to the Airbnb in Ireland and I found this doula, like she really had to get me out of freeze because we were in a car. We were like doing this crazy grid work. I'm like weeks away from giving birth. And my body was like, dude, like we need some help. And angels do show up in those moments. But it was truly, truly something. Z and fam, you are a brave, beautiful souled lady doing God's work, exposing the woo-woo for all to see and learn. Much love to you and your team of cryptid researchers. Fabulous work. Thank you so much, Curious L. We're doing it with love. And I hope that just the authentic shares of what happens behind the scenes is just, brings revelations and clarity about everything that is like, it's so profound and deep. When I say DNA activation, it's coming from such a deep place that I feel like it's important for you guys to know. I'm not channeling some being, I'm not channeling anything. It comes from such a deep soul reservoir from my lived initiations in the trenches in my human body with God through very, very human spaces and experiences. LA says, when you mentioned breaking the 666 spell, I felt something inside of me dissolve. Rebecca says, found you through Laura Eisenhower. So happy to still be connected to you and your work. Thank you so much for still being here, Rebecca. It takes an angel to see one. So I'm sure that just means that there's something very deep inside of you that is resonating with this work. With the 666 spell, it's kind of a big one, because a part of my body, like sometimes I want to, like, let's say, like, have that number be like the price of something. And then I'm like, oh my God, like somebody out there is going to create some, video being like, see, she's a false light agent because she's using the 666 and just completely like not understand the work at all. And so because I still have a little bit of that pitchfork fear, I've not been so brave to completely reclaim that number. But absolutely. Did you guys like understand what I was saying there? It's like the fact that even that number is associated with Satanism is part of the spell. Like if we could dissolve all the spells and eradicate this demonic consciousness and realize that this world is Christed and every particle of this reality is in union with God, then 666 would be actually a sacred number that has sacred meaning. And if we can get to that place where it's an embodied feeling, where we no longer have like attachments and cords inside of our own body to that realm, to that experience, then we're collapsing that experience. And this is what one of the intentions that we are going into this weekend with, for sure, is breaking through that. Is there info on the event you're talking about? I got here late. Hi, Gloria. Welcome. Talking about the Cygnus Gateway this weekend. Let's see here. Present, share screen. Let's see if I can. Chrome tab. Here we go. And let me see. Yeah, okay, so this is good. Let me see if I do this. There you go. So I love this. I thought this was really fun. The inverted fallen AI reality has infected humanity and evil has spread all over the earth. I think that part of my medicine is being able to talk about stuff in like a really lucid way. And a really big thing that's come through around this event is how the satanic reality has like subconsciously harmed and imprinted us, and so like we don't live life where like in a way where everything is sacred, because there's parts of our own body that have been touched by this virus. So I feel like the first 20 years of my life were about being deep in there, like having been molested as a child, discovering pornography when I was 11, being drugged and raped in my, when I was like 18 or 20, however old I was at that point in that area of life. All of those things gave me direct codes that I then got to basically heal and understand and unravel, and became just all of these files that I now have. about that inversion. And I feel like at this point, I have just met that really deeply. We talk about meeting the shadow intentionally, being willing to meet the shadow. It's like disassociation is like when we just see something uncomfortable and we immediately run away from it. And then there's this, we realize that when we have consciousness, when we have free will, we can actually just feel that discomfort and then go even deeper into it, right? So this is essentially what we're talking about. We're like, oh my God, like the world is run by this crazy fallen consciousness that is doing like a horrible stuff. Instead of just not knowing how to process it, like how about we just go into it, feel how our body has been like underneath that spell and has been harmed by it, learn how God can heal us miraculously, right? And when we do that together during a Stargate opening, which is this weekend, the Earth, the Sun, and the Deneb of the Cygnus constellation are coming into connection. This is all about the original mother mysteries, the connection to the other realms, the passages between life. I mean, these are the stargates that allow us to break spells. Like, I think that what I've learned about the Cygnus gateway over the past few years is that every single Cygnus gateway is the best time to break spells because it's this organic, true architecture that comes through, and we're able to work with that energy to collapse the false. And so, yeah, every day we do an oracle ceremony, which is when I do my angelic singing, sound healing, and I guide us through a process where we go into a ceremony. We're going to be working with the Aurora Stargates in the ceremonies. There's so much you can say about them, but really you need a direct experience inside of your body. So we're going to connect to the crystalline Aurora core technology in the earth. We're going to connect to the Aurora Stargates, and we're going to understand how our angelic DNA plugs into that angelic technology on the earth, and it works and functions as one. So we are kind of the consciousness navigator part of the technology, and we're able to utilize that massive energy source, massive light technology to induce impact on the planetary level, to shift collective timelines and energy. One of the things that I would love to weave in, yeah, so, we're talking about shadow realm healing, how to use our body as a proxy for planetary healing gridwork. We're connecting into the Aurora core. We're talking about the original eternal mother father frequencies and how the inversions inside of our own bodies block us from experiencing and communing with that eternal consciousness, which is the reincarnation technology, right? So this is kind of all like complicated, which is why it requires a few days to explain and really tap into that. Because it's not just about understanding mentally, it's about experiencing with our consciousness and our light body. So when we're plugged into that space, then we can experience the rehabilitation of the interdimensional grids, of these energies. And that's really the space where we learn. Then we're going to go into the satanic reality, understanding the biospiritual abuse of our body, of men, of women, of the earth, of children, and how to get into those very, very evil, dark fields, but to bring in that miracle God medicine. And yeah, I think I was saying something, and then I wanted to finish this thing that I was saying, and I can't remember what I was going into. But anyway, the ceremonies are going to be incredible. Oh yeah, what I was going to say is that I want to weave in the first 3 days are this practice. We're going to the ceremonies, but the fourth day, we're actually going to be doing this massive gridwork ceremony. So we're going to together be dismantling these interdimensional passage blocks, this reincarnation technology. We are going to clean up these satanic passageways. But what I really also want to do is harmonize our collective neurosynergic brains and create the highest timeline. So we're going to pray for Elon not being evil. Like, we're just going to create a reality where Elon's not evil. We're going to create the reality in which people can really, leaders can really start to have encounters with God, to hear the eternal frequencies, to connect with their higher self and be guided and follow their heart, to awaken their hearts. I feel like it's going to be really powerful for us to not only work on the interdimensional, but really like start to project that higher reality into the grids. And so that's the last thing that I'll share about that, I guess. When are you going to write another book? I'm actually working on that. I it just takes so much time, and right now my main focus is definitely the Earthstar Academy curriculum. Currently, I'm working on 2.2, the Galactic Shamanism training, because I feel like this is what we need the most, understanding how we can rehabilitate our biospiritual technology that is our body. So for us to really be able to get into this body and start to elevate and ascend the body's DNA and biology from the base layers, instead of in the mental body, right? A lot of the false light, new age, ascension stuff exists in the mental body, but it's not actually ascending your system. That's why you can know all this stuff and you're still not healing that much and not moving forward, and your gifts aren't coming online, even though you know all this information. It's a false mental ascension matrix that it's trapping people inside of. So this work is really somatic, organic. We're going into the multidimensional fields inside of the body. This course is like 150 modules or something though. So it's going to take me a long time to get that through. But yeah, I obviously have two young children that I'm very, very committed to raising in a good way. We actually just got a Waldorf teacher here. The local community is creating just a small experimental preschool pod. So it's like about 8 families with children between like 3 and 4 years old. And we brought in like a Waldorf teacher, and we're currently like decorating this little cabin that we have down like on the bottom of my rental property here. And yeah, we're just gonna have this little Waldorf school here, and I'm really, really excited about that. So yeah, amongst all of that, I hope to be able to finish writing these books, but I know that these kids, they're so young for such a short period of time, so I've been trying to find that happy balance in that work-life balance is really something. Because like I can just get so passionate about my work, but like I need to be there for my children because they are also my mission, to really protect that sacred innocence inside of them and to give them an environment which their souls can incarnate into their bodies properly. So Brad says, do you use the violet flame? I do not use the violet flame. And the reason for that is because I generally use source field energy. So just the source field energy is like 13D plus, eternal source energy, void source energy. So that energy is just the most effective because it's God. And so I've not needed to really use any other. What I do use sometimes is like the aurora plasma, which again is just another form of that same energy. It comes from the same place. Curious says, I'm sharing this with the legal future leaders taking down the corporate complex, whom are now spiritual thanks to podcasts like yours. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing. Please do share these videos if you find them inspiring. This has been such a personal and beautiful share. Like I love this share. I know most of my videos are more like workshop-y where I'm just like telling you guys stuff, but this was like so close to my heart. And I'm so grateful that all of you guys decided to hang out with me and just listen to me ramble about my life for a little bit. I'm so honored. So somebody says, are our souls not anchored into our bodies already? So no. A lot of people are operating from like personality fragments. So for me, I'll just share my experience. The process of connecting to my soul has meant that I now can remember my past life experiences, my wisdom, my knowledge, my soul's preferences. right? What my soul is all about, what my soul has committed to, and what I like to do, and what my purpose is, and what my soul has chosen to do in this lifetime, and the specific gifts that I've brought into my body to use. And so this has been a 10-year process. When I was first waking up, I could feel the frequency of my soul, which was completely, I guess not completely different. Like we are like, at least, some of our soul has to be in our body, but we can have personalities that like aren't, it's like personality imprints. I call them fragmented personality crystals or imprints that can literally just be like programmed personalities. This is why, we were programmed with like high school archetypes, right? Like the jock, the valley girl. Like, how come all these people have the same personality? Because it's not their soul. It's like a personality crystal that encapsulates your energy and forces you to exist inside of a box and not be your true self and not be your soul. So, I feel like I'm a long ways away from my soul fully inhabiting my body, because that's the true process of ascension as well, right? Your soul is descending and your biology is ascending in frequency. So what ends up happening is that your soul is carrying these qualities of God, and as you incarnate, your body's going to start to vibrate in that frequency and start to express these higher frequency expressions of itself. So, those things become the ability to miraculously heal, to impact the planetary grid and things like that. And eventually, even other greater miracles that I'm not able to do yet at this point, but I have seen miraculous healings unfold inside of these healing containers, like, addictions disappearing and cancer disappearing. I feel like those things are relatively easier manifestations, because the somatic body is responding to a frequency of health that then adjusts. And I think that's now been documented so much in Dr. Joe Dispenza's work as well. So it's 4 o'clock. I gotta go and alleviate my childcare professionals. But thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today. I love you so much. I hope to see you in a couple days in the Cygnus Gateway. And I love you so much. And I'm so excited to be here on this journey with all of you. And I will see you soon. Bye for now.